Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for August 6th, 2025. Today, we are going to start with a very important message from Can't Pray Me Away on TikTok. Sam is an ex-Mormon conversion torture survivor who is working with a group of lawyers to get conversion torture survivors' voices on an amicus brief that will be presented to the Supreme Court of the United States.
You are a survivor of some form of SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression change effort. Tell me what you want the Supreme Court to know, because they're going to be addressing the bans on conversion therapy. Comment what you would want SCOTUS to know. Probably going to do some form of a poll, and I can't do that poll if I don't have your contact information, so go ahead and please reach out to me on any of my platforms or through my email, and the poll will make you anonymous. There's a good chance that you can get your voice in front of the Supreme Court with me, and I don't know how much I can say at this point. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Are you a survivor too? Please reach out to Sam if you feel safe and ready to do so. Your voice is important, and Can't Pray Me Away can help your voice be heard. Now let's chat about LDSbot. From their website, LDSbot is an AI that can talk to you about the church and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Without going any further, I can already tell this is a pro LDSbot. Why? Because they said the church and didn't specify which church, even though there are many churches and no single church is the church. An article from KUER says about LDSbot, in many faiths, the Sabbath day is considered a day for worship and rest. But for LDSbot, an AI trained on information from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's the busiest day of the week. People want to talk to LDSbot about a lesson they're teaching at church that day, or a talk they're giving, said creator Josh Coates. Or perhaps they're in a class at church and they want to ask LDSbot questions while the teacher is teaching. Coates created LDSbot in 2023. He's a former computer programmer and executive director of the B.H. Roberts Foundation, a Salt Lake City-based independent nonprofit that supports educational programs related to the Latter-day Saint faith. LDSbot is their most popular project. It reaches 1,500 users a day and has had nearly 800,000 unique conversations since it began. To create it, Coates and his team compiled a database of theology, history, and scripture. When the bot, which was built using OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 model, formulates an on-demand answer, it's reaching from that store of information. LDSbot and secular AI approach church-based questions differently. LDSbot's website notes that the bot is programmed to be faith-positive and can make mistakes. At this point, when I was reading the article, I took a pause and asked LDSbot the following. Are there tenets of the LDS faith that follow Steve Hassan's BITE model? And this was the answer. The BITE model, developed by Steve Hassan, is a framework for understanding how certain groups may use control over behavior, information, thought, and emotion to influence individuals. It's often used in discussions about high control groups or cults. When it comes to the Latter-day Saint faith, it's important to approach this topic with sensitivity and understanding. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints emphasizes personal agency, the importance of personal revelation, and encourages members to seek truth and understanding through study and prayer. If you have specific concerns or questions about how the church operates or its teachings, I'd be happy to help address those. It's always beneficial to look at official church resources or speak with church leaders for the most accurate information. Let me know how I can assist further. When I asked a non-apologist AI the same question, it answered very differently. I won't read everything it said because it was very long, but here is the gist. Steve Hassan's BITE model is a framework used to evaluate the degree of authoritarian control in groups and relationships. It categorizes controlling behaviors into four main components: behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. Here is a breakdown of how different aspects of the LDS faith are often analyzed through the lens of the BITE model. Behavior control. The Church's teachings on the word of wisdom and the law of chastity are seen as direct controls over a member's body. The requirements for temple garments and the specific grooming guidelines for missionaries and students at Brigham Young University are cited as forms of regulating physical appearance. The expectation of a full tithe, 10% of income, and significant time commitments for church callings gatherings, meetings, and service can be seen as forms of financial and time control. Information control. The church has historically been accused of withholding or obscuring certain historical facts and doctrinal changes from general members, with information often available only to a few trusted scholars or leaders. The church produces a vast amount of its own media, magazines, websites, videos, to provide a centralized and consistent narrative which can limit exposure to alternative viewpoints. Thought control. Doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. This popular phrase, originally from a general authority, is often interpreted by critics as a direct command to distrust one's own critical thoughts and instincts in favor of church teachings. The doctrines of good versus evil and the concept of an us versus them mentality are seen as a form of simplifying complex issues and discouraging nuanced thinking. The use of specific terms and cliches, example, tender mercies, the brethren, the spirit, can be seen as thought-stopping techniques that reduce complex ideas into simple, emotionally resonant phrases. And the last one, emotional control. The emphasis on personal sin and the need for frequent repentance, particularly through confession to a bishop for serious sins, is seen as a way to promote feelings of unworthiness that can only be resolved through a leader. The belief that leaving the church will result in spiritual consequences, a loss of eternal salvation, and potential family separation in the afterlife can be seen as a way to instill fear and prevent members from leaving. So, what did you think about those two different answers to the question? Here are my thoughts. The non-apologetic answer is a direct and analytical response. Its purpose is to answer the question head-on by applying the BITE model's framework to specific tenets of the LDS faith. The LDSbot answer is indirect and defensive. Its purpose is not to analyze the BITE model's application to the church, but to preemptively defend the institution against the critical framework. It avoided the substance of my question entirely. Instead of discussing how the BITE model might apply, it pivoted to a generic positive message about the church and then deflected the inquiry by suggesting I seek information from official church resources or church leaders, the very sources that might be questioned when using a framework like the BITE model. The KUER article about LDSbot goes on to say, beyond facts and history, Coates said the bot can also be helpful for more subjective conversations about individual crises of belief. Some people want to talk to the bot about faith issues they're having or questions or concerns, Coates said, and honestly, the bot is so patient and so kind, much more so than most humans, and so it's a great partner to have hard conversations with. I don't know, when I asked it about the BITE model, it didn't seem very forthcoming. The article goes on to say, Patrick Mason, a historian of the LDS Church at Utah State University, acknowledged that AI, like books or the internet, is a helpful tool to spread belief. It can be meaningful and positive in the lives of its members, he said, but these things can also be enormously destructive. When members turn to AI instead of a bishop, friend, or family member, they potentially lose out on a part of the faith-building process, Mason said. He has heard of church members and leaders using LDSbot to write talks for sacrament meeting at Sunday services. One of the remarkable features of the church has been its lay ministry, he said. If we outsource that to AI, what does that do to religious formation within the community? I do think it will be interesting to see how AI continues to function within the Mormon Church. Now I want to mention a musician named Ellee Duke. I might be late to the game when it comes to her, but if I am, there are others who are too. Her official website says Ellee Duke is an American artist, songwriter. Born in Utah, she began writing songs at age 5. By the time she was 17, she had written hundreds of songs and began making trips to Nashville with big dreams of breaking into the music industry. During these Nashville trips, she came in contact with Big Machine Music and signed an artist/publishing deal. She graduated high school early, moved to Nashville shortly after, and began writing and recording with different writers and producers. A post on her Instagram page from roughly 6 months ago explains further. She says, many of you have been resonating with this song. So crazy, we are all yearning to be known deeply. LOL. Would love to hear your story if you're open to sharing. I left the Mormon Church almost 6 years ago now. At this point in my life, I'm much less concerned with my beliefs being different from someone else's and more intrigued by who someone is as a person. It's hard when you have worked so hard to be who you you are and you genuinely love this version of yourself, but you don't feel like some of the people you love the most really want to know you for you. They would rather live with the idea of who you used to be in their mind than who you are presently. This has been very damaging to my self-worth at points, but I'm still working every day to give that love and acceptance to myself and to find those people who are safe spaces and remind me I am worth knowing, because I am. And so are you. She has written so many songs that talk about her experiences and feelings since leaving the church, and they really speak to me. My new favorite is one that she showcased on her TikTok on July 24th after she asked her parents to go to therapy with her. They said yes and then never actually showed, and a few months later, instead of showing up at therapy, her parents sent her a salad spinner. I would absolutely suggest checking out that song. It's called Salad Spinner. Now let's go to the ex-Mormon subreddit for this post that says, anyone here from Perth, Western Australia? The temple was on the news. There is then a screenshot from an Australian news segment that shows a group of LDS folks dressed in white posed in front of a Mormon temple with a caption that reads, WA man faces 29 CSA charges. Christopher Bartle allegedly assaulted 4 girls between 1998 and 2007. The person who posted then wrote, a convicted white supremacist terrorist and TBM active in Rockingham Ward had been charged with over 30 counts of child SA and R starting in the late 90s to mid-2000s. The family are in denial and supporting him. The church in Perth is a very small place, and I have no doubt there are more victims out there. If you or someone you know has been abused by this man, please contact Crime Stoppers. Now let's go to another post on the ex-Mormon subreddit that says, I decided to resign from the church when I discovered all the lies they taught. After 30 years of being a faithful member, I took the courage to hand my letter of resignation directly to Elder Renlund and tell him to his face that the church is false and that we no longer believe in them. He visited my stake for the conference and I waited until the end when everyone is lining up to greet him and shake his hand. All the members were ecstatic to be in front of a supposedly special witness of Christ. When I resigned in front of him and handed in my letter, he only looked away from me with a gesture of contempt. I decided to take my cell phone, take a photo of the moment, and sit in front of him to wait for some kind of gesture of concern for the sheep that was leaving. I always thought that an apostle would leave the 99 sheep and go for the requested sheep, but that was not the case. My stake president was pale-faced at the situation, and I gave him a copy of my resignation letter. Elder Renlund just left without looking at me again or saying a word. After 3 weeks, the resignation acceptance letter arrived and my records were deleted. I invite everyone to renounce directly in front of the apostles, wait for a visit from them, and tell them to their faces that we no longer believe in them or in the church. That makes them uncomfortable and they try to avoid it. That's my experience. I leave 2 photos that I was able to capture from that moment. This got me thinking about resignation, so of course I read through the resignation section in the official church handbook. Let's go over it because it is hella interesting. Section 32.14.9 of the LDS General Handbook says, requests to resign membership. If a member asks to resign his or her membership in the church, the bishop reaches out to see if he or she is willing to discuss the concerns and try to resolve them. The bishop and member may also counsel with the stake president. The leader ensures that the member understands the following results of resigning church membership. It revokes all ordinances. It removes all membership privileges. Readmission by baptism and confirmation can occur only after a thorough interview and, in many cases, a membership council. Keep that in mind because we will talk a bit more about that in a second. A previously endowed person is eligible to receive a restoration of priesthood and temple blessings only with first presidency approval and after at least 1 full year from readmission. So if I resigned and then lost my ever-loving mind and wanted to be readmitted to the Mormon church, the very top men leaders would have to give me permission. Gross. The handbook goes on to say, if the member still wants to resign church membership, he or she gives the bishop a written signed request. The bishop submits the request to the stake president through LCR. The stake president then reviews and submits the request through that system. Leaders should act on requests promptly. You know what this reminds me of? The process I had to go through to resign from my last job so that we could move to Texas. The handbook then says, a person can also resign membership by sending a signed notarized request to church headquarters. A minor who wishes to resign his or her church membership follows the same procedure as an adult, with one exception. The request should be signed by the minor, if over the age of 8, and by the parents or guardians who have legal custody of the minor. If a member resigning membership threatens legal action against the church or its leaders, the stake president follows the instructions in 38.8.23. Maybe we will go to that at another time. A request to resign membership should be acted on even if priesthood leaders have information about a serious sin. Any information about unresolved sins is noted when the request is submitted through LCR. This allows priesthood leaders to resolve such matters in the future if the person applies for readmission into the church. So, if you resign from the Mormon church and the leaders know that you were, say, drinking coffee and alcohol and having sex outside marriage, they go ahead and keep a record of that, just in case you want to come back and they need to shame you before you can be readmitted. The handbook goes on to say, a priesthood leader should not recommend resigning church membership in order to avoid holding a membership council. I was a little surprised when I read this one because I swear this has been recommended to people when the leaders didn't want the publicity of excommunicating someone. The handbook then says, leaders continue to minister to those who resign their membership unless they request no contact. And this was the real kicker to me. I figured that once someone resigns, the church gets the mother hint and leaves them alone. Nope. Unless you specifically request to be left alone, they keep your contact info and keep inserting themselves in your life. All of this reminds me of the quote, a cult is an organization that won't let you leave with your dignity intact. And last up today, let's finish with another great quote that says, when someone tells you that questioning is dangerous, they're not protecting truth, they're protecting control. Truth invites inquiry, it expands under pressure, it grows through contact, but control relies on repetition, not revelation. And once you accept the idea that doubt is disloyalty, you begin to betray your own intelligence to preserve someone else's narrative. The most powerful awakening isn't believing something new, it's realizing you're allowed to ask. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.